Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar today. Before we kick things off, just want to let you know we're going to be doing live Q&A during the webinar in the chat. So feel free to submit your questions through the webinar app there, and we'll do our best to get to them as they pop up. If we can't get to your question during the webinar itself, we'll reach out to you afterwards and make sure you know what the answer is you're looking for.
Hi, my name is Jack Bray. I'm CEO of FieldClock. Thank you for registering and joining this webinar today. We're really excited to have you here. Over the last decade, FieldClock's gone from this tiny time clock to a HR workforce management platform for farms. And in the course of doing that, we've watched the explosion of H-2A across the US. And so many farms are using H-2A now. So many farms are dependent on H-2A. And at the same time, the regulatory burden, the compliance burden, the nuisance of keeping up with H-2A regulation has just gotten more and more complicated each year. The cost for doing it has gotten more and more each year. So, part of that is why we're teamed up with the Farm Bureau. We love that they're, in DC and in the State House arguing on behalf of farms on why we need to keep this sane, why we need reasonable regulation, why we need to just work to keep farms viable. At the same time, we team up with whoever we can in the industry who is really doing their best to help farms and is really pushing the state of farming forward. To that end, one of the most interesting people we've come across recently is a guy named Donovan Maskell. And Ashley's been having a lot of interesting conversations with Donovan. I find his background fascinating. He's been everything from H-2A laborer to employer to recruiter to consultant. The guy has just a massive wealth of knowledge. And to that end, I'm going to step back. I'm going to let Ashley introduce herself and then Donovan and let them take it from there, because nothing I can say is going to be as interesting as what they have to say.
Hi, I'm Ashley Reese, and I'm an account executive here at FieldClock, and I've been with FieldClock for about 3 years now. Prior to working at FieldClock, I was growing apples and peaches in New Jersey, and like many of the farmers that I meet all across the country, I was wearing a lot of different hats. I was working out in the field, I was working in the office, and rules and regulations were constantly changing on me. And I was spending countless hours in the office just working with time cards and paperwork and spending too many hours when I could have been home with my family or out in the field. But my favorite part of my job is really working with farmers and helping them streamline their process and helping them stay compliant in a really easy way. And I'm about to introduce you to Donovan, and I really was impressed with him and his story, and I'm excited for the opportunity for you to meet with him as well and hear his story. And it really resonated with me because just like Donovan, he really did learn from the bottom and build himself up. And that was my experience with agriculture. And I hope that his story really resonates with you and that you're able to learn something from him just like I did. So with that, Donovan, please introduce yourself.
So my name's Donovan Maskell, from South Africa. Been living in the US since 2016 when I started on the H-2A program. A little bit of background about me. We farm, or my parents farm back home. That being South Africa, we livestock farmers back home, mainly sheep. We farm around 30,000 acres, roughly 3,000 sheep, which is not a big farm, but it's medium sized in terms of that kind of stuff. I got my degree in ag economics and financial management at the University of Stellenbosch in 2015, and I've always been interested in ag, and my parents always suggested to my brother and I that they will buy us a plane ticket to wherever we wanted to go, so we can at least explore the world before we come back to the farm eventually. And since agriculture has been in my blood for, going on 33 years now, it was just something that made sense to me, come to the US, work and travel at the same time. And that's kind of how this all started. Got here in 2016, worked for an employer in Arkansas. I'm still working for the same employer, not on the farm anymore, but that's how the journey started. Worked on the farm for about 2.5, 3 years, and then kind of moved up into a warehouse position. They opened a ag retail business, and I stepped into that. Got married in 2021, and then from there, I got my green card. I was able to establish AgriPro placements during that time. And yeah, just started focusing on trying to give back to the people around me, as I had many opportunities given to me. So that's kind of the way that got started. And yeah, fast forward a few years, and yeah, we're sitting and just trying to increase and get better at what I do, and help as many people as I can help. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Now, we've had a few conversations already, and one of the things that you really glossed over, and I'd like to take a step back and really take a deeper dive into. You went from working on a ranch, working with sheep, and then you pivoted and started working into an entirely different type of farming operation. And I love this because I really think that it helped with how you operate and how you run your operation today. So what type of operation did you move into in Arkansas?
So I was totally unfamiliar with what they do over here. I mean, I knew, we have row crop farmers in South Africa, but not to the extent of what we have here in the US.
So no experience with row crop farming, and they took you on anyway.
Yeah, no experience. I say that, but I knew what I was getting myself into. I'd done a lot of research on what to look forward to when I got here. When I got the opportunity, I made contact with the employer immediately and over email, and we started talking, and I started just being interested in what they do. I got here. I think the first day that we got here, our employer pulled us into his office and asked us, "What can y'all do?" Of course, there were a few guys that had experience that have done this in back home and things like that. No one wanted to speak up, and I said, "Perry, I can't do anything, but I'm willing to learn. If by the end of the year, if I can drive this tractor from the farm shop to the office, yeah, that would be good. But I'm willing to do anything and willing to learn as much as I can learn." And that kind of put me in that position. He always speaks about a funny story when he was going through the resumes and stuff. He just said, he always tells us to the people whenever we meet new people, he's like, "Yep, he was on the maybe pile." But there was something that drew me to him, and I kind of looked over his resume again, and it just something said, "You need to take a chance on this guy." And yeah, I'm sitting today. So I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity, because otherwise, yeah, I would have surely got an opportunity somewhere else in the US. But just kind of shows our relationship that we've built over the last 9 years.
No, I really like that, and I think it shows in your operation, and I really like that about AgriPro placements. From what you've told me, as part of the recruitment process and how you're helping your clients, part of that process is matching the right employee to the right employer, and that questionnaire process. And I think that, from what you've said, you've really found a really good way of matching them up in that questionnaire. How are you taking what you've learned from your experience with your employer and going through that maybe pile? How do you put that into practice? Walk us through that questionnaire. What are you looking for? What signals a good fit?
So yeah, I work with a recruiter in South Africa. She does a lot of pre-screening beforehand, and gets to know the guys on a personal basis. Of course, there's a lot of people that apply, so you're not going to get real personal with everyone that you meet, but you at least try and communicate in an efficient manner. So she pre-screens a lot of the people. When I get on a call with an employer, we try and see what their needs are, what they need, what they're looking for in a person, that kind of thing. And I make notes of that, and I ask her, and she normally will start sending resumes to that employer then that align with what they kind of looking for. But during that onboarding call, normally I ask the employer, or I tell them, look, we are going to start sending you resumes. Go through those resumes and see, are there 10, 15 resumes you like? If so, let me know. Kind of rank those resumes according to your 1 to 15 or 1 to 10, however many you decide on. And I'll go through them and have a look at them, and then also make calls to those guys that are on those resumes, whether it be guys or female or women that are now coming through the industry as well, and like I said, the lady that I work with in South Africa, she pre-screens those people, and so she kind of has a feel for them as well. I then just have a 30-minute phone call with the people. My biggest thing is I don't try and catch someone on, if they lied on their resume or their application. You can kind of see that when you talk to someone, they'll overshare information, and you can kind of pick up on that. So it's just to get to know the guys, because in the end of the day, personality is what has to matter on a farming operation. A guy can learn skills.
Now, do you see some common themes regarding what employers are looking for? And do you necessarily agree with what they're looking for, or would you maybe tweak those top skill sets that they should be looking for?
I mean, first of all, employers are looking for hardworking individuals. All these jobs that you come and do in the US are hardworking, long hours. You must be prepared to get in the heat, get in the cold if you're during winter, kind of deal. So they're just looking for people that basically can handle that kind of stuff. And guys that, in my experience, guys that don't move around a lot, jump from one operation to another, kind of deal. That's become a big, I think, issue in the H-2A environment. So they're just looking for stability, and I always try and, my goal is to help my employers maintain their current employees. The farmers that I've helped throughout the last 2.5 years, majority of those employees go back to those farmers year in and year out. And that's the goal that I tried to establish when I first started this, was, to create that consistency. Because let's be honest, you go and work on a farm and you have to have new people every year showing up. You have to spend weeks, educating someone on how your operation runs. Why not have that ability to try and keep people that you had there for, however many years, come back on a recurring basis, and because they know your operation. It's just, not everyone's like me. I was taught by my parents that, if you start something, you finish something. Whether you like it or not, you finish it. And at the end of the year, you have your discussions with your employer, and if you don't agree on something, then you part ways, or if you can work through something, you stay. But then you need to remember that if you discuss something at that end of the year junction, that next year you decided to come back and you decided on certain things that you spoke about. So you can't be upset again the next year if you don't have your way. Employers can also only do so much, and that's basically one of my big things, is just creating consistency throughout the whole the whole process, having guys come back, building continuity on farms. Yeah, basically that.
Well, it's clear that you have integrity both in your personal and professional life. Uh, you know, one of the other things that I'm hearing too is that, you know, this process that you're building, you know, for your clients really is unique because you want their employees to come back, not only because it helps with their skill set and their retention, but also one of the things that we talked about as well is that language barrier. So by having those quality employees return with that language barrier, it really helps reduce that year after year. Can you talk a little bit about that? You know, I can imagine utilizing the H-2A program without having a person like yourself or you know, AgriPro placements working with me. That might be quite challenging. Can you walk me through maybe why that's challenging and how you help with that process?
Yeah, so you know, I speak multiple languages. So it has its advantages when you are interviewing people. You know, because you can speak in their language. Now I'm talking mainly about South Africa. Um, that is, it helps a lot because a lot of people are, especially if you look at Afrikaans people, and I'm just generalizing. It's not a blanket statement, but it's just generalization. A lot of them are uncomfortable to speak English if they don't have to. You know, so if you can talk Afrikaans to them, um, you know, you can at least communicate that way, and it's much better communication than a guy that's nervous over the phone because he has to still worry about how he must say a word or what's this word if he directly translates in his mind. You know, I catch myself doing that many a times because you think in two minds. You know, you're thinking in Afrikaans and you say something in English and it's doesn't make sense at all because you in Afrikaans it made sense, but in English it doesn't. Um, so that I think helps in a large way. Um, you know, so I see that there's definitely benefit in stuff like that. Um, which yeah, so that's what I can say on that. Yes.
Yeah. And conversely, we've been working with a former wage and hour inspector as well. And one of the things that he advocates for as well is really giving employees the opportunity to do that. Because what happens is during an inspection, when wage and hour comes out, if you're not giving your employees the opportunity to air grievances or to communicate, if wage and hour comes out with an inspection, they're going to take the opportunity to lay it all out there. Because if you're not giving them the opportunity to let it all out, they're going to let it all out to wage and hour when they come out for an inspection. And that's not the best time for your
No.
employees to let out their grievances. So you know, it really is a two-way street, and that H-2A contract really is a partnership, and you know, communication is key.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned. You know, I'm also a nervous person. You know, but I was honest with my employer from the get-go when I first got here, and I said to him, "Look, I can't do anything." And you know, there was an instance that we had on the farm when we first got here as well. You know, on the H-2A program, you have to reimburse your travel expenses and things like that. So anyway, we get all our travel reimbursements and stuff. And normally how it works is you get half up front and half at the end of the season. That's normally how it works. Anyway, so we get a check from our secretary, and it's like double the amount. So I was like, oh, something's wrong here, or we got cash actually. And I said to the other guys, I think they done something wrong. Anyway, so I found the employers like, look, this is what's happened. I think we got more money than what we were supposed to get. You know, and in that instance, I think, I could have kept quiet, or we all could have kept quiet at that point and just taken the money, and they would have never known. But that there kind of established another point of establishing a relationship with your employer, is that you're honest. So now, from now on, if you mess up or you do something that's not, he knows you're going to be honest about it and not just beat around the bush. So that's why I say honesty and stuff goes a long way in this industry. Um, you know, is my employer maybe a guy that's willing to give people chances? Yes, he definitely is, because he's that kind of person. But I mean, your situation at your employer, so you must read that kind of situation and then adapt to that. And then, I just say honesty is the only way to go when it comes to things like that.
Absolutely. Now, I'd like to switch gears a little bit. Something else that, through our conversations that we've really identified as a really big value add for AgriPro placements is, the fact that you're able to save farms from really major delays. Because as we understand, just the H-2A contract process is really challenging. And it's challenging because really small errors or very specific things can actually cause major delays. And major delays in timing can actually be catastrophic for harvest season. So on the contract side, what are some top mistakes that you see would cause some really major delays, and what are the impacts to those delays?
Ashley, I've seen a lot on housing this past year. They Department of Labor has become very strict on that. You source that through state workforce agency, and they then use certain other government offices and agencies to go and do those certifications on the housing and stuff. But they've become very strict on housing. So, for example, like, there have been a few employers that have had no screens on doors and windows, for example. So you go out and the guy goes and does the inspection, and he has to take photos and so forth. And they don't have those screens up. That there takes another. He does the inspection, submits it to his person, his higher up, and then that higher up sends it to another person at the state workforce agency, and that process takes a week or two. So, you delayed that, in turn, that starting time by another week or two, just because of a small thing like that. Now, is that on us agents to notify employers of things that they need to do? Yes, for sure. That's why I try and ask, especially for in Arkansas, the area I'm in, I know the person that does the inspections. So I ask him for updates on what they're looking for, or what do we need to let our employers know. But still, they've become so strict that you can have all those things in place, but then there's a little small thing other that they have never looked at before that they're looking at now that causes an issue. Last year there were tremendous, or this year there were tremendous backlogs because they were short-handed and couldn't process applications fast enough. So a lot of employers only got their employees in April instead of March, whenever they needed them. Those are kind of some of the issues that I've seen on the housing side of things. When we talk in terms of paperwork, if you aren't filing with the correct business name or the correct EIN numbers and those kind of things, that adds time to those applications as well, because it's back and forth with Department of Labor, and none of them have phone numbers to kind of phone and resolve issues. It's all through email, and the email reply is normally a day. So.
Oh, sorry,
So
Donovan, I'll let you finish that, but I have a question after that.
So I just try and do things on a timely manner. You know, we can also only do things as fast as we get supplied information. So, for example, like now, government shutdown, can't do anything at the moment, and there are a few winter visas that I have pending, but government shut down, so you can't process anything because the Department of Labor is closed, and you need that information or those documents to send with your I-129 packet.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the government shutdown because I was actually going to point that out. Yeah, there's two really interesting concepts that you mentioned in there, Donovan, that I think a lot of people don't intuitively think about or don't necessarily, like, it's just not part of their daily way of looking at their business. One of those is you mentioned early on that, like, the criteria they're looking at, or you know, the way they're handling applications or investigations, whatever, that can change. And you know, there's so many farms we talk to who they've never been investigated, and in their mind that means they never will be, and that's just not the case. It's not how it works. And they think that they've always done it a certain way, therefore that way will continue to work. And then what we see in practice is either clustered investigations in an area, or they start reading the paperwork in a slightly different or a more nuanced way than they used to, and that causes headaches. And that kind of ties in with the other thing I thought that was super interesting, which is just the idea that, like, the farms, we as citizens have to be on our game and showing up and bringing our A game every time. The government won't necessarily do the same. So, overnighting it and then they post it back. But the overnighting it matters because, for instance, if that was the difference between getting your interview scheduled or done or whatever other paperwork, if that happened a day before shutdown as opposed to a day after shutdown, that matters. Yep. And the one thing we hear from so many people who have either gotten an investigation or had some sort of dispute or issue, or maybe needed to change H-2A paperwork and couldn't, or whatever the case may be, it's no one has a time machine. You can't go back and manufacture more time when you wish you would have had it. So being able to do things in a timely and accurate manner makes all the difference in the world, and doing that today.
Yeah, and I mean, I see a lot of employers, one of the first thing, especially new employers that get on the program, are still doing the old school way of keeping time and things like that. And that's one of my first questions, or one of my first things is like, how are you keeping time, or how's your housing situation looking like? Because those are big points. How's your workman's compensation looking like? Because you need that. If you don't have that, that's one of the things that they require you to go through. Housing is going to be a requirement. And I've said, guys, multiple times to my employers, I say, you need to keep accurate records, because I have the records and I have the paperwork and stuff, but those, when they show up there, it's they give you a week or two and you need to have those documents present, and if you, like, for example, on time, for example, pay and all that kind of stuff, if you don't have that stuff, you can't just go back and all of a sudden make paperwork to show that you've paid these guys X amount. There needs to be a trail of that, and it's a very important thing, and I can't stress it enough to employers to have that stuff in place. Just because it makes life easier. The way technology is improving in your farming landscape, you kind of need to keep up with those improvements. If you look at equipment that's improving, if you look at all those kind of things, if you can invest in that, you can invest in something that keeps your time and stuff accurate. Because I've just been reading up, and my numbers might be wrong, but fines and stuff in this industry, if they fine you, it starts out at about $10,000 a mistake that you have. So investing in something that can save you that time and money at the end of the day is a no-brainer to me, because yes, you are in the government's wheelhouse, and you have to unfortunately adhere to their rules and regulations. That's why they're those rules and regulations. I mean, if you're doing this program, you have to adhere to those things. You can't break them or try and find ways around them, to make things and adjust to you.
It's not enough to do the right thing. You have to be able to demonstrate you did the right thing. And it's so funny how so many people don't extend that same thought to all aspects of their business, kind of like what you were talking about, with equipment in particular, like precision farming's a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like people pay good money to have the right tool that's going to go do everything that's needed on that field. You wouldn't go back to the way you were doing it in the 1980s. You definitely wouldn't go back to the way you were doing in the 1920s. And yet then we look at timekeeping and HR records, and there's this blind spot for so many small businesses and family farmers who are still keeping time the way they did in the 1980s or the 1920s. Yeah. And it's not resilient. And again, it works until it doesn't, and when it doesn't work, it's really expensive. And especially with H-2A, you mentioned fines and starting points, and one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people miss on the fines is when fines are multipliers. And for instance, if your pay stubs aren't H-2A compliant, if you don't have the FEIN or the employee's SSN or the hours offered or those, I think there's 8 data points that the CFR says you have to have on there. And if you don't have those on there, that's not just a one-off. The investigator is going to be like, hey, get those on there. It's going to be, hey, there's a penalty, and that penalty is multiplied by every employee you've paid improperly.
Exactly.
And that gets really expensive really quickly.
I mean, I think I read a case study. There was a fruit operation in California, I think it was. I'm not sure what their name was or anything like that, but they were looking at fines of around $550,000.
Harm that's going to absolutely shut them down and maybe put them out of business. So
and instead of spending, say, $1,000 to be compliant, you're spending $550,000 now to get out of issues. That's what is that $1,000 compared to the $550,000 for you? That's kind of how you have to look at those kind of things.
Yeah, and one of the recent ones that DOL published, there's a farmer in southern Washington, same range. It was like a $500,000 penalty, or excuse me, they ended up paying about $500,000, of which about 200,000-ish were back wages and incorrect pay that they had to fix, and then the other 300,000 are penalties. And if you look at it as you should have been paying the right pay anyway, that could have been a $200,000 issue over time and part of your regular business, and you would have just been a healthy business. And then there's another 300 grand on top that you're just giving to the government because you didn't do it the right way.
And I mean, we're looking at today's climate, the way ag is at the moment, a lot of pressure on agricultural industry at the moment with commodity prices the way they are. So, you don't want those compliance issues if you don't need to have them. Whether it's on paperwork, whether it's on time, whether it's on, you name it. I just take, for example, my employer, 1 year in particular, I had to get my eyes tested again in South Africa. And there were a nice pair of glasses that I liked here in the US, and I bought them and I'd send them over so that they could put my lenses and stuff in those frames. And I just asked our secretary, I was like, ma'am, do you mind I know I'm getting a paycheck now, but just for the postage and stuff, just deduct whatever the postage is out of that paycheck, that's fine. So she was like, yeah, all good, no problem. So she done that because she's the one that mailed it away for me and got it sent off. And come to find out the following year when I came back, she said, Don, you won't believe it, but they actually done an audit on us because we withheld money from you without having any form of documentation as to why we withheld this money. But they
Even though
weren't
it's something
charged.
you asked them to do.
Yes, they weren't charged for anything or anything like that, but they were questioned as to why they just withheld this money, and it was for personal expenses, for example, like my personal expenses. And they just said, well, he asked us to, and they said, well, you need to kind of have that stuff documented, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble. And since then, they haven't really done they haven't done that much again, because it was coming out of a place, a good place, but you can do something good, but it might lead you in the wrong way in the government's eyes.
Yeah, and we do find, like, just about everybody we talk to is trying to do the right thing. They're trying to treat their employees right. They're trying to keep their business running right. And it's hard if you don't know all the ins and outs and all those tricky little things. And that's why we exist, is because it's so hard to do it without the right tool.
I mean, I'll be the first one to say I don't know it all, but and that's what I say to my employers. If they ask me a question and I don't know, I say, let me find out for you, because I don't want to give you information that's inaccurate, then lead you down the way. And then a few months later, you come to me and say, well, Donovan, you said that's the way we need to go. I'd rather find out information for you than give you the wrong information. And that's kind of how that's how I treat all my employees that I work with, is just look, if I don't know it, I'll go and look for it, and I'll get back to you on that, and have a better understanding myself, because in that way, I'm also learning that same thing, because I don't know that answer. So I go and research that, and I find it out. Now I know. And if someone might have the same question a little ways down the road, and I can say, well, now I know this answer because I actually had to go look it up. So that's just, this industry is constantly changing, and you have to constantly adapt and constantly learn new things. If you aren't learning and you aren't adapting, then you might as well shut doors, because in the end of the day, if you're an agency involved with employers and group of employers, and you're not doing things right, the government's going to come after you as well. So you need to, if you're providing wrong information, then it's only fair that they do come after you, because you're giving out the wrong information. So that's why I say I really enjoy just learning about things, or if someone has a question and they ask me and I don't know, then I go look it up, because it's me learning as well. And if you aren't learning every day, then there's something wrong. That's why we are, is we need to learn every day in order for ourselves to grow and become better at what we do.
Yeah, this is going to be my proud Farm Bureau pedestal moment, and I'll circle back in a second, and I hope it makes sense. And I've done this so many times to Josh, so he part of my mission as I joined FieldClock was really to become a member benefit for Farm Bureau. And the reason why is because I have sat through countless Farm Bureau meetings where I've listened to farmers struggle through so many things. And the reason why is because there's such an onslaught of information that comes out. And I like it at the same time, because Farm Bureau is the source of truth for farmers, because it is the one place where they actually get those updates. You were talking earlier, and you were talking about how you have your finger on the pulse of knowing the different regulations that are coming out. And for a lot of our family farms all across the country, where they get that information is at County Farm Bureau meetings. So those meetings are really so important to them. So part of our mission really is becoming a member benefit for Farm Bureau states. And we want to become a resource, a tool for those states and for those members, so that as rules and regulations change, we as can create tools and forms for them to be able to easily capture time, to be able to capture housing requirements quickly and easily so that they can document those things, capture it, record it, and just move on with their day and not have to worry about it. And what I like about this too is that we were talking about how costly fines and regulations are. And we're so proud to be able to offer those compliance tools at such a low cost and at a discounted rate for farms that really do struggle to stay in business. And I'm so thankful that Farm Bureau exists. I'm proud to be a Farm Bureau member. I'm proud to be a member benefit. And I was so excited when you were telling me that you were also a Farm Bureau member and you are part of, I believe it's Woodruff County as well. And that you attend that. I'm not sure if you hold any other position there, but I didn't ask you this, but how did you get involved with the Woodruff County Farm Bureau?
Funny. So my employer, I guess he's a little bit higher up in the Farm Bureau stuff, and they were having a meeting. Some of their older board members had stepped away and, kind of retired and moved out and all that stuff, and they were needing some more people on the board, I guess. And he just phoned me out of the blue one day. He said, "Donovan, would you like to do it?" And I was like, yeah. I mean, he said, "Well, we still have to pass it and it needs to go through, but I just threw your name in there, so I couldn't really say no at that point. I was already halfway in the door, so I said, yeah, I'll do it." And that's basically how I got involved in that. And then, but I've been a member ever since I've had my first vehicle in the US. So that was in 2017, I think, and have been with the same agent since 2017, and they've helped me a lot. So, I mean, I can't complain. They really do good for us.
Fantastic. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. So just couple random questions for you here before we open it up to other questions here at the end. But if you were to recommend one small fix for a farm to start out with, what would it be? As far as like H-2A, what should they focus on?
Now, for the coming season, I'd say just make sure your job descriptions are lining up with whatever you have in your paperwork, because I've changed those rules. There's now 2 different skill levels, so most H-2A people will fall under skill level 2, but make sure your job descriptions reflect what's being done and what is going to be done. Secondly, make sure your timekeeping is on point. If you don't have that stuff on point and things like that, it's going to get tough. Then make sure your housing and those kind of things are all in line. If you don't have that stuff in line, then that does get tough, because all that stuff just delays the process a lot more. So I'd say job descriptions, get in touch with your agencies that you deal with, make sure that they informing you about these things, and make sure they guide you through how they formulate those job descriptions, because a lot of agencies, myself included, we use the same kind of job descriptions for ag equipment operators. You just tweak it a little bit here and there, but those things are going to have to be a little bit more specialized as of this coming year with all these new changes and stuff. So, and then, like I say, secondly, timekeeping, have your workman's compensation stuffs in order, and housing. Make sure housing stuff's right, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And, for just talking about people who are considering switching you know, from that pen and paper to a digitized system. Just food for thought. If you already have your list of tasks that are on your contract, it's so easy to grab your tasks and put them in your timekeeping system. And everything goes from start to finish and you remain in compliance. And it's that easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that. I mean, it's really more farmers need to adapt that because it's just so crucial to be in compliance with stuff, especially, you know, and the benefit of y'all's program is the fact that it's not just for H-2A. It's you can do permanent labor as well. And that's the icing on the cake is that you need that stuff, whether you a small time farmer, whether you're a big farmer, things need to be compliant, and that's the perfect thing, you know, that y'all can deliver for people, you know, which I have a few clients in mind, so it's stuff that I'll be implementing soon for some of my employees as well.
Oh wait, I was on mute. I love hearing that. Yeah, the tooling exists. Farmers, we're here for you. You know, whether you're tiny or huge, you know, giant enterprise farms can probably have deep pockets and abilities to come up with $500,000 in penalties. If you're a small family farm and you get hit with $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 penalty, you know, that hurts. That hurts a lot. So yeah, the tooling exists. There's no reason not to use it. And that's why we do what we do, because we're all here to help farmers.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with you.
Oh, and then I don't know, I would love to identify as well, what states are you operating currently in? I didn't ask you in the beginning and I regret doing that.
Ashley, I help Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Nebraska, North Dakota. I basically help any employer in any state. If they need help, I help them.
Now, did your brother stay at the home farm, or did he move on?
No, so my brother got his degree in chartered accountancy, and he's actually working for a company in the UK at the moment.
So now, so as far as succession planning, what's going on with your mom and dad's ranch?
They are still operating it at the moment, but my brother and I aren't going back. You know, and we just both kind of found our feet. You know, I have a family in the US now, wife and little baby girl, and then we'll have another baby boy in February. So, and then my brother, you know, he's in the he worked in South Africa for a while, but he's, you know, in the UK doing quite well in finance over there, and he also has a girlfriend back there, so which she's British, so I mean, I don't think he's going to have plans for going back if he gets settled there, you know.
We won't hold him to it.
No.
Thank you for everybody who showed up today. You know, there was a really good discussion between Ashley and Donovan, a lot of interesting information in there. If we didn't get to your questions, we will reach out to you afterwards, make sure you got the information you're looking for. For anyone else who wants to reach out to us later, you can get us at fieldclock.com or agroproplacements.com. Have a great day.